You've probably noticed something strange about the world, something that no one wants to say out loud. The ones who rise to the top, the ones who seem untouchable, unstoppable, even worshipped, are often not the kindest, not the most honest, not the ones who play fair, and meanwhile the ones who try to do right, who carry integrity like armor, who lead with compassion and humility, they're the ones who are overlooked, ignored, even trampled. If you've ever asked yourself why the worst people succeed while the good ones seem to struggle, you're not alone. But what if I told you the answer isn't in politics, economics, or luck? What if the real answer lies in a forgotten truth? A truth uncovered not by conspiracy theorists or spiritual gurus, but by one of the most misunderstood minds in history, Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche didn't believe in sugarcoating life. He didn't believe in comforting lies or social niceties. He looked at the world with brutal clarity and asked the questions others were too afraid to voice. He saw something twisted in the moral codes we were taught to follow. He saw how the good were taught to shrink and the strong were shamed for their power. From the time you were a child, you were told that being good was enough. That if you just followed the rules, did what you were told, kept your head down, the world would reward you. But you've lived long enough to know the truth. The world doesn't operate on fairness. It operates on something else entirely. Power. Nietzsche called it the will to power, the core drive behind every living thing. Not happiness, not goodness. Power, the impulse to expand, to dominate, to express, to become. Every plant that stretches toward the sun, every animal that claims territory, every human that asserts their voice, it's all the will to power. And when that power is suppressed, when it's denied or shamed or guilted into silence, something vital is lost. You were taught to associate power with cruelty, as if the moment you reach for more, you're somehow corrupt. But think about it. Who benefits from you believing that? There's a morality that gets praised by society, religion and culture, a morality that tells you to be meek, to forgive endlessly, to never want too much, to put others first even when you're crumbling. This is what Nietzsche called slave morality. It's not morality born from strength, but from weakness. It's the morality of those who had no choice but to obey, and so they told themselves obedience was virtue. And then there's master morality, the morality of those who create their own values, who rise without shame, who define good and evil by what supports their growth, not because they lack empathy, but because they refuse to be shackled by systems designed to keep them small. You've felt this pull inside you before, the quiet voice that says, "There's more, I was made for more." But then comes the guilt, the shame, the whisper that says, "Who do you think you are to want that, to speak up, to take up space?" That voice isn't your conscience, it's your conditioning. It's the echo of generations of programming designed to keep the powerful in check and the obedient in line. And Nietzsche saw it for what it was. Not divine law, not universal truth, but survival strategy. The weak couldn't defeat the strong physically, so they won through manipulation. They rebranded ambition as sin, confidence as arrogance, strength as cruelty, and it worked. The ones who questioned authority, condemned. The ones who sought more than just survival, shamed. The ones who dared to live by their own code, labeled dangerous, unholy, mad. But here's the truth that no one tells you. If you're playing by the rules of a system that was built to keep you in place, you'll never rise. You'll wait and wait for recognition, for fairness, for your goodness to be rewarded. But it won't come, because the system isn't broken. It's working exactly as it was designed to. Now think about the people you've seen rise. The ones who climb ladders with ruthless focus. The ones who bend reality to their will. They're not waiting for permission. They're not asking if their desires are too much. They're not wasting time apologizing for their existence. And yet, that doesn't make them evil. It makes them unafraid. You've been taught to see morality and success as incompatible, as if to win you must betray your soul. But Nietzsche offered another path, a third way, the path of the Ubermensch, the overman, the one who transcends society's binaries, not a monster, not a saint, but something new, something authentic, a person who lives from their own center, guided not by fear but by inner truth. Becoming that version of yourself doesn't mean abandoning compassion. It means reclaiming your power, refusing to play small, refusing to be useful to a world that only values you when you conform. So ask yourself, whose morality are you living by? Who taught you that ambition is dangerous, that desire is sinful, that self-expression must be sacrificed on the altar of being good? The ones who succeed aren't the ones who are better. They're the ones who stop waiting, who stop apologizing, who see the world for what it is, not what it pretends to be, and rise anyway. You were never meant to be silent. You were never meant to be small. You were never meant to trade your fire for approval. You were meant to rise. Every time you held yourself back, every time you bit your tongue when you should have spoken, every time you chose peace over truth, just to be accepted, you were feeding someone else's power while starving your own. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you trained, conditioned to believe that restraint is virtue, that humility is holiness, and that strength, your strength, is a threat to others. But what if it's not? What if your strength is sacred? Nietzsche believed that morality, as you've been taught it, wasn't handed down from the heavens. It was built, constructed like a prison, with invisible bars and velvet ropes. It doesn't punish you openly. It seduces you quietly, tells you that playing small is noble, that suffering is beautiful, that self-denial is spiritual, and all the while it rewards those who break the rules with more freedom, more wealth, more influence, because they were never playing the same game as you. The worst people succeed not because they're evil, but because they're uninhibited. They're not bound by invisible contracts to be liked, to be moral, to be small. They operate from the will to power, raw, unapologetic and unfiltered. And while you were doubting yourself, they were deciding who they wanted to become. But here's the twist no one talks about. Power doesn't just belong to the shameless. It belongs to the awakened. The ones who stop pretending the game is fair. The ones who understand that the system was never designed to reward goodness, it was designed to reward conformity. And once you see that clearly, you can stop waiting for someone to give you permission to rise. You can begin rewriting your values from the inside out. It starts when you stop seeking validation and start seeking alignment. Not with society, not with tradition, but with something deeper. That fire in your chest, that hunger in your gut, that pull you've always felt towards something more, something wild and sovereign and ungovernable. That's not your ego talking, that's your essence trying to breathe again. This is what Nietzsche meant when he spoke of becoming the Ubermensch. Not a monster, not a tyrant, but someone who has shattered the illusions of morality and reassembled a new code. A personal, living morality born from strength, clarity, and will. You don't have to wait until the world collapses to begin that transformation. You can start now. You can start by telling the truth even when your voice shakes. You can start by choosing desire over duty. You can start by saying no to what shrinks you and yes to what sets your soul on fire. You are not here to be a servant to someone else's story. You are here to write your own. And yet, that's terrifying, isn't it? Because when you stop following the script, there's no one left to blame. There's no more hiding in the comfort of I was just doing what I was told. You become the author and the authority. You become accountable to something higher than approval. You become accountable to truth. That's the weight of real power. That's why most people never claim it, but not you. Because if you're still listening, then a part of you is already done with the old morality. A part of you is ready to stop being the martyr and start being the creator, not just of ideas, of identity, of life itself. You've seen how the good struggle. You've felt their exhaustion, their heartbreak, their quiet despair, and deep down you've wondered if all that suffering was really noble or just unnecessary. Maybe, just maybe, you weren't born to suffer quietly in the background. Maybe you were born to disturb the order, to stand tall in a world that wants you on your knees. Because when you stop believing that obedience is goodness, something extraordinary happens. Your energy shifts. You begin to move differently, speak differently. People feel it. Some will be drawn to you like gravity. Others will try to clip your wings, not because you're wrong, but because your freedom threatens the illusion they've built their lives around. You don't owe them your silence. You don't owe them your guilt. You owe yourself liberation. But liberation doesn't come by waiting. It comes by choosing. Choosing to break your own chains before someone else does it for you. Choosing to own your desires instead of hiding them behind humility. Choosing to see that the very traits you were taught to fear, ambition, boldness, intensity, are not flaws. They are clues, markers of your potential. The worst people don't succeed because they're smarter. They succeed because they are relentless. They don't negotiate with their own power. They embody it. And if that truth scares you, good, because it means you still have fire left to reclaim. This world doesn't need more rule followers. It doesn't need more quiet heroes suffering in silence. It needs you, unleashed, undeniable, unapologetically real. So take a moment now, not to think, to feel. Feel what it would be like to live without guilt, without asking for permission, without waiting to be recognized. Feel what it would be like to walk through the world without shrinking, without flinching, without second-guessing your every word. Feel what it would be like to burn clean through every false belief you've ever inherited and emerge as something untamed and true. That version of you, it's not a fantasy. It's your birthright. You don't need to become someone else. You need to become who you were before the world told you who to be. That's the real journey. That's the climb Nietzsche was pointing to, not toward power over others, but power over yourself. Power over the internal judges, the whispers of shame, the inherited voices that said, "You're too much," or "That's not allowed." Silence them. Not with hatred, with clarity. Because once you realize that morality has been weaponized against your potential, you can lay it down, gently, finally, and begin to write something truer, something wild, something free. There is something ancient inside you that remembers how to rise, not with violence, not with vengeance, but with vision, with presence, with the unshakable knowing that you no longer need to justify your existence to a world that fears its own reflection in you. Because that's what this all comes down to, reflection. You've been taught to believe that the world's rejection of your power means something is wrong with you, but maybe the truth is, they see in you what they buried in themselves. That's why they mock the bold. That's why they punish the ones who refuse to bow. Because every time you stand in your truth, you become a mirror, showing them where they've settled, where they've silenced themselves, where they gave up the fight. And that's uncomfortable, that's threatening, because deep down everyone knows what they could have been if they hadn't been told to stay small. But you're starting to remember. And here's what you need to know. You don't have to destroy the system to escape it. You just have to stop feeding it with your guilt. Stop watering it with your silence. Stop trading your truth for belonging. The game only works if you believe in the scoreboard. But once you realize you were never playing the same game, you're free. That's when things start to shift. You walk into rooms and you don't look for approval anymore. You bring presence. You bring command. Not because you're trying to prove something, but because you've remembered something. That you were never meant to beg for a seat at the table. You were meant to build your own. This is what Nietzsche meant when he said, "Become who you are." It's not a suggestion. It's a dare. A challenge to peel back every layer of conditioning, every identity that was handed to you, every mask you've worn to survive, and let the real you step forward. The one who doesn't flinch when challenged. The one who doesn't apologize for being intense, ambitious, driven. The one who doesn't need to be understood to be powerful. You don't owe anyone a watered-down version of yourself. Let the world misinterpret you. Let them talk. Let them label you arrogant, intimidating, too much. Because while they whisper, you build. While they doubt, you decide. While they hesitate, you move. And that's what separates those who rise from those who wait. It's not talent, it's not privilege, it's not even intelligence, it's presence, will, fire, the willingness to face discomfort, to face rejection, to face your own shadow, and not look away. You've been told that ambition is dangerous, but what if the real danger is staying tame? What if the world suffers not because too many people are bold, but because too many people are silent? How many lives go unlived because someone was too afraid to claim what they wanted? How many dreams die in the name of politeness? How much genius has been buried under the weight of, "Don't be selfish, don't make waves, don't shine too bright"? You weren't born to be safe. You were born to be sovereign. And sovereignty doesn't come with a manual. It doesn't come with applause. It comes with solitude, with inner wars, with the choice to keep going when everyone around you begs you to be something more digestible. Because the truth is, becoming powerful will cost you something. It will cost you your old self, your need to be liked, your addiction to approval, your loyalty to mediocrity. But what you gain in return is everything. You gain the ability to speak from your soul instead of your fear. You gain the capacity to walk away from anything that insults your spirit. You gain the clarity to see through manipulation, through gaslighting, through every system that was built to keep you docile. That's the awakening, not some mystical event in the sky, but a deep cellular knowing that you are no longer available for a life that doesn't set you on fire. And no, this path won't be comfortable. You will lose people. You will outgrow conversations, environments, even identities. But what you lose in comfort, you gain in freedom. You gain in truth. You gain in the kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need to scream to be heard. You become unshakable. Because once you've faced yourself, your fears, your doubts, your buried desires, there's nothing left to fear out there. No critic more ruthless than the one you've already disarmed. No judgment sharper than the one you've already forgiven in yourself. This is why the ones who succeed often look like they don't care what anyone thinks. It's not that they're cold. It's that they've faced fire already. They've chosen themselves too many times to be shaken by noise. And you can too. You don't need to become someone else. You need to become deeply, radically, undeniably you. That's your rebellion. That's your revolution. That's your return. And when you step into that version of yourself, fully, without apology, you change the atmosphere. You stop attracting tests and start attracting reflections. You stop surviving and start creating. You stop negotiating with life and start commanding it. And no, this isn't about control. It's about presence. Control is fear disguised as strength. Presence is strength that doesn't need fear. And that's what Nietzsche's work was really pointing toward. Not domination, not destruction, but transcendence. The power to rise above the borrowed morals, the imposed limitations, the inherited shame, and live as a creator of your own reality. You are not here to obey someone else's blueprint. You are here to draw your own map. So draw boldly, speak recklessly, live audaciously, because the world doesn't change when good people wait their turn. It changes when good people stop waiting. You were taught that if you're just kind enough, just patient enough, just moral enough, the right people will notice and the right doors will open. But the truth is, those doors don't open. You kick them open, or you build new ones. And that doesn't make you evil, it makes you awake. It makes you dangerous to the system that profits off your doubt. It makes you powerful in a way that can't be bought, sold, or silenced. And the moment you realize that, the moment you finally stop asking, hoping, waiting, you'll remember what power really feels like. Not domination, not fear, but presence, purpose, fire, the kind that burns away illusion and leaves only truth behind. You've spent so long doubting that fire inside you because the world kept telling you it was dangerous, too bright, too loud, too much. But that fire, that's your compass. That's the part of you that refuses to settle, the part of you that aches every time you shrink, the part of you that knows, even when your mind forgets, that you were not born to be controlled, you were born to become. And becoming is messy. It's not pretty, it's not graceful, it's violent in the most sacred way, because to become who you really are, you have to break who you were told to be. You have to shatter the idea that being good means being passive, that being kind means being silent, that being spiritual means erasing your edges. You are not here to dissolve into the background. You are here to shape the foreground with your voice, your choices, your fire. And yes, that fire might burn bridges. It might make people uncomfortable. But what if the bridges that burn are the ones that were only ever meant to lead you back into smallness? You can't heal by going back to what hurt you. You can't thrive by living in the moral cages you were born into. And you can't evolve if you're still begging for permission from people who are terrified of their own evolution. Nietzsche wasn't telling you to become ruthless. He was telling you to become real, raw, untamed, authentically powerful. The Ubermensch is not the tyrant. The Übermensch is the artist of existence, the soul that creates meaning instead of inheriting it, the one who carves truth out of silence and dares to live without a script. And that's exactly what the world needs now, not more obedient souls playing by the rules, but visionaries who write new ones. You've always known that you don't quite fit, that something about you doesn't sit comfortably inside the neat little boxes. And that's not a flaw, that's a sign that you're meant to challenge the architecture of this reality, that your existence is a question mark in a world desperate for exclamation points. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need to decide. Decide that you're done waiting, done shrinking, done pretending that your power is something to apologize for. Because the longer you wait to own it, the more time you spend living someone else's idea of who you should be. And eventually that erodes you. Slowly, silently, until one day you don't recognize yourself. You look in the mirror and all you see is compromise. The light still flickers, but it's dimmer. The voice still whispers, but it's hoarse. And deep down, you know. You didn't lose your power. You gave it away, piece by piece, in the name of being liked, accepted, understood. But you can take it back, right now. You don't need anyone's blessing to be who you are. You don't need consensus to be free. You just need the courage to let go of the version of you that made everyone else comfortable. And that takes strength. That takes vision. That takes a kind of wild grace that this world doesn't know what to do with, but desperately needs. The worst people succeed because they act with clarity. While the good ones wrestle with doubt, the worst ones move. While you were waiting to be certain, they were acting on instinct. And the lesson isn't to become like them. It's to stop betraying yourself in the name of being better. You don't need to become cold to rise, you need to become clear. Clear about who you are, clear about what you want, clear about what you will no longer tolerate. And that clarity is power. Power isn't dominance, it's direction. It's the ability to walk into any space and not be moved by the noise. To know your value so deeply that no praise inflates you and no insult diminishes you. That's the power of the Ubermensch, not ego, essence, not superiority. Sovereignty. You don't rise by pushing others down. You rise by refusing to stay down when the world expects you to, and every time you stand in your truth, no matter how inconvenient it is, you become a little more unshakable, a little more free. They may call it selfish. Let them. They may call it arrogant. Let them. They may say you've changed. Let them. Because what they're really saying is that you no longer fit the version of you they could control. And that is their discomfort, not your problem. You are not here to carry their expectations like chains. You are here to break them. To burn through the programming that told you your power was poison. To rise not in rebellion but in remembrance. Because that version of you you've glimpsed in your most honest moments, the one who speaks without flinching, loves without limits, walks without fear, that's the real you. The one who's been buried under years of conditioning, but never left. That's the version of you that Nietzsche was speaking to. the one who refuses to live on their knees, the one who doesn't need approval to act, the one who even in silence radiates authority. You don't need to conquer the world, you just need to stop letting it conquer you. And once you do, you'll understand why the worst people rise, not because they're chosen, not because they're smarter, but because they claim what the good are too afraid to touch, the throne, the mic, the spotlight, not out of greed, out of knowing. And now, that knowing is yours too. You no longer have to live as a supporting character in a story that was never written for you. You no longer have to dim your light so others can shine comfortably. You no longer have to wear the mask of morality when all it's done is muffle your truth. Let them misunderstand you. Let them project onto you. Let them fear what they cannot name. Because you are no longer here to be understood. You are here to be undeniable. You weren't born to wait in line. You weren't born to beg for visibility. You weren't born to sit in the shadows while others rewrite reality in their image. You were born to speak, to build, to become. And the moment you stop pretending otherwise, everything starts to shift. The hesitation fades, the fog of guilt begins to clear, and underneath all that programming, all that politeness, all that pretending, you find something solid, something ancient, something untouchable. You find your will, not the shallow kind that wants attention, the deep kind, the kind that rewrites fate, the kind that reshapes worlds. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's relentless, and once it wakes up inside you, it won't let you go back to who you were pretending to be. It won't let you sit quietly while your dreams decay. It won't let you trade power for peace that was never real, because you've tasted what it means to see clearly, to see how the rules are designed to reward silence, to see how morality has been edited to glorify self-erasure, to see how success is often reserved for those who are bold enough to ignore the scripts entirely. And suddenly you realize the game you were playing wasn't yours. You were a character in someone else's story, following their moral codes, upholding their beliefs, fighting their battles, living by their metrics of what it means to be worthy. But the moment you realize that, you're no longer bound by it. You can rip the script to shreds and write a new one. A story where your worth isn't measured by how likable you are. A story where your value isn't determined by how quiet you can be. A story where your power isn't something to be tamed, it's something to be lived. You're not here to impress, you're here to impact. You're not here to be agreeable, you're here to be aligned. And the difference between the two is everything. The agreeable version of you shrinks in conflict. The aligned version of you stands firm in truth. The agreeable version of you nods and smiles while dying on the inside. The aligned version of you says what must be said, even if it shakes the room. And yes, it will shake things, it will break illusions, it will expose people, it will trigger those who still live in cages and call it home. But that's not your burden to carry. You're not here to make others feel safe in their smallness. You're here to show what expansion looks like. Because every time you rise unapologetically, you give others permission to do the same. And that's how the world changes. Not through more followers, but through more fire. Through souls that refuse to compromise their essence. Through beings who no longer seek validation, but live from vision. That vision, it's already inside you. You've seen it in your daydreams. You've heard it in your late-night thoughts. You've felt it in moments of silence when no one was watching and the truth had room to breathe. You've imagined the version of you who doesn't hesitate, the version who moves through the world with grounded intensity, the version who doesn't ask, "Am I allowed?" but says, "This is who I am." That version of you isn't some distant fantasy, it's a memory, a return, a remembering of who you were before the world told you to behave. And Nietzsche's warning was this: if you don't become who you are, someone else will do it for you. They'll assign you a role, they'll hand you a script, they'll tell you what matters, and before you know it, you're halfway through life, living a masterpiece of mediocrity that you didn't even choose. But not anymore. Because now you've seen through the veil. You've seen how the game rewards audacity, how the bold take what the good were promised but never given, how the unapologetic create movements while the meek wait to be chosen. And that leaves you with one choice, not to become ruthless, but to become real, to unlearn every story that told you to stay soft, stay silent, stay scared, to detach from every belief that made you shrink to fit inside someone else's comfort zone, to rise, not in rebellion, but in revelation. You are not a prisoner of your past, you are the architect of your future. You are not bound by the morality of the masses, you are free to create your own code, one that honors truth over tradition, essence over etiquette, power over performance, and yes, that might make you dangerous to the system. But to those still asleep, you were always dangerous, not because of what you've done, but because of what you could become, because deep down they can feel it. The presence in your voice, the gravity in your gaze, the fire behind your silence. You don't even have to speak for the room to feel it. Because when you start walking in alignment with your true self, the world has no choice but to respond. It might try to push back, it might try to test you, but it will feel you, and that's when you know you've crossed a threshold. You're no longer asking life to happen to you, you're happening to life. You're no longer hoping for change, you are the change. You're no longer praying to be rescued, you've realized you are the rescue. And that's the beginning of everything. Because the people who rewrite history are never the ones who played it safe. They're the ones who said the unspeakable, did the unthinkable, and became the unimaginable. They were feared, misunderstood, labeled mad, but they moved the needle of evolution. And so can you, not by becoming perfect, but by becoming untamed, not by becoming dominant, but by becoming undeniable, because in a world that wants you sedated, the most revolutionary thing you can do is wake up, fully, fiercely, finally. Once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep, not really. You can pretend for a while, but the illusion will itch, the old patterns will feel hollow. The conversations will taste like cardboard. You'll feel the tug, that quiet burning pull that says, this isn't it. This isn't who I am. This isn't where I stop. And that's when you know. The old version of you is gone. The obedient one. The one who thought morality meant martyrdom. The one who thought staying silent was noble. That version of you was never weak. It was just waiting. Waiting for this moment. The moment when the waiting ends and the becoming begins. Because you can feel it now, can't you? The tension between who you were trained to be and who you truly are. It's not subtle anymore. It shows up in your body, in your relationships, in the way you speak and move and dream. It shows up every time you swallow your truth and every time you dare to voice it. And every time you choose your truth, no matter how small the act, you rewire something. You take one more step out of the cave and into the firelight of who you were always meant to be. That's the path Nietzsche carved out, not for the masses, not for the timid, but for the few who dare to question everything. The few who look at the world and say, no, I refuse to believe that playing small is my highest calling. The few who are willing to lose comfort in order to gain clarity. And that's what power is, not titles. Not money, not control. Power is clarity. Power is choice. Power is waking up and saying, I will not betray myself today. I will not perform. I will not beg. I will not edit who I am to fit into a story that was never written for me. That kind of power is magnetic. That kind of power draws opportunities, people, experiences toward you. Not because you're chasing them, but because you've become the kind of person who doesn't need to chase. You attract, you embody, you become. That's what the worst people often understand, even if they use it in twisted ways. They move with the assumption that they deserve to exist fully, and the world bends to that assumption. But you've been taught to hesitate, to justify, to earn your right to take up space. No more. You don't need to earn your existence. You don't need to soften your voice to be heard. You don't need to dim your light so others feel more comfortable in their shadow. You are here to rise. And rising means letting go of the parts of you that were only ever survival strategies. The niceness that kept you from speaking up, the guilt that kept you from receiving, the humility that was really just fear dressed in spiritual clothing. Let it fall away, you don't need it anymore. You don't need to be the good one, you need to be the whole one. The one who remembers that truth is more powerful than politeness. The one who realizes that boundaries are a form of love. The one who understands that not everyone is meant to walk with you. And that's not a loss, that's liberation. Because when you stop filtering yourself through the lens of external morality, when you stop asking if your power is too much, you create a kind of inner silence, a stillness, not emptiness, but presence, the kind of presence that doesn't flinch when challenged, the kind that looks into the eyes of the world and says, I see you, and I'm not afraid. That's the presence of someone who has nothing to prove and everything to express. And that's what Nietzsche meant when he called for the birth of the Overman. Not a monster, not a tyrant, a new kind of human, one who doesn't just inherit values but creates them, one who doesn't just follow paths but forges them, one who isn't governed by fear or guilt or shame but by vision, by will, by truth. And you're not here to worship that archetype, you're here to become it. You're here to look into the eyes of your conditioning and say, not anymore. You're here to meet the old scripts with fire and silence and let them burn. You're here to build a new rhythm, one beat at a time from the raw materials of your own soul. Because this isn't about rebellion for rebellion's sake, this is about alignment. This is about integrity, not the kind that gets praised from pulpits and podiums, the deeper kind. The integrity that comes from living in harmony with your own knowing. The kind that says, I don't care if this makes sense to anyone else. It makes sense to me. And that's enough. And yes, you'll be misunderstood. You'll be labeled. You'll be called difficult, intense, arrogant, selfish. Let them say what they will. The world has always mocked what it doesn't understand. But over time, that same world begins to shift around the ones who hold their ground. Not because they fought louder, but because they stood longer, deeper, clearer. And that's what you're doing now. You're not screaming for change, you are becoming it. And in that becoming, you reclaim every part of yourself that you once buried to survive. You reclaim your voice, you reclaim your rage, you reclaim your joy, you reclaim your sovereignty. You don't need to be liked, you need to be lit, from within, by the fire of your own becoming. And when you burn like that, you don't just light your own path. You light the way for others who are still stumbling in the dark. That is the quiet revolution, the inner uprising, the unstoppable movement that begins not with a scream but with a decision. The decision to stop living as an echo and start living as a force. There comes a moment in every life where the illusion cracks. When the stories you were raised on, the ones that said good things come to those who wait, that humility guarantees reward, that virtue alone will be enough, start to rot in your hands. Not because they were never beautiful, but because they were never built for power. They were built for peace, for predictability, for safety. But you were never here to be safe, you were here to evolve. And evolution doesn't happen in comfort, it happens in the chaos of contradiction, in the friction between who you are and who you were told to be, in the decision to stop running from your shadow and start integrating it. That's what true power looks like, not domination over others, not the performance of righteousness, but wholeness. Radical, messy, unapologetic wholeness. The kind of power that makes people uncomfortable not because it's violent, but because it's honest, because it doesn't wear a mask, because it doesn't need permission. You've already tried the other way. You've tried being nice, being agreeable, being digestible. You've tried contorting yourself to fit into roles that shrunk your soul. You've tried shrinking your voice to be loved. And what did it give you? Maybe approval, maybe temporary peace, but not power, not fulfillment, not fire. Because fire doesn't live in the mouths of the obedient. It lives in the hearts of those who refuse to betray themselves one more time. And that's you now. You've reached the edge. The part of your story where the hero has to decide: stay in the village, where it's safe, where everyone claps for your compliance, or step into the wilderness of your becoming. The wilderness is where the Ubermensch is born, not in applause, in solitude, not in acceptance, in rejection, not in comfort, in chaos. But that chaos, it's sacred. It strips away the noise, it burns through the lies, it reveals the architecture of your soul. And when you survive that fire, when you choose to walk through it instead of running back, you don't come out the same. You come out clear. You come out untouchable. You come out real. And that's when you begin to understand why the worst people rise. Because they never waited for the world to crown them. They took the crown for themselves. They didn't ask if they were worthy. They decided they were. And the world followed that energy, not because it was good, but because it was certain. That's what power responds to, not morality, certainty. So what would happen if you stopped apologizing? What would happen if you stopped dressing your greatness in humility just to be palatable? What would happen if you dared to be certain, not of everything, but of yourself? Because that certainty changes everything. It changes how you walk into a room. It changes how you speak, how you listen, how you love. It sharpens your gaze and steadies your breath. It creates a field around you, an undeniable gravitational pull that makes people lean in, even if they don't understand why. They feel it, even if they can't name it. That's not arrogance. That's embodiment. That's what happens when you stop performing for love and start radiating from truth. And the truth is, you were never meant to fit in. You were meant to challenge, to question, to disrupt, to awaken. And yes, that will be lonely at times. Yes, that will come with consequences. But so does hiding. Hiding costs you your fire. Hiding costs you your voice. Hiding costs you your life. And you've already lost too much time trying to earn what you were born to claim. So claim it. Claim your strength, even if they call it intimidating. Claim your vision, even if they call it delusional. Claim your power, even if they call it dangerous. Because it is dangerous. To everything that feeds on your doubt, to every system that survives on your silence, to every person who benefited from your smallness. Let it be dangerous, let it be loud, let it be seen, because the world doesn't need more politeness, it needs more truth. It needs more people who are willing to become untamable, not cruel, not careless, but clear, because clarity cuts through conditioning. It slices through the fog of inherited belief and reveals something fierce and ancient and utterly holy. It reveals you, the you that existed before the world got its hands on you, the you that dreamed without limits, the you that dared to want more. That version of you is still here. Beneath the shame, beneath the guilt, beneath the morality that told you to earn your worth instead of remember it. It's time to remember, not just who you are, but what you are. You are the storm they didn't see coming. You are the page that writes itself. You are the mirror they can't look away from. You are the question that burns through all the answers. And you don't need a throne to be royalty. You don't need permission to be powerful. You don't need proof to be enough. You just need to decide. Decide that the version of you who has been surviving is no longer in charge. Decide that your days of dimming are over. Decide that your presence is not a problem to be solved, but a force to be reckoned with. Because when you do, everything changes. Not overnight, not without resistance, but with the kind of momentum that builds in your bones and echoes in your breath. And that momentum will carry you places you never thought you'd go. It will draw the right people to you. It will dissolve the ones who can't rise with you. It will open doors you thought were sealed. And all you have to do is keep choosing you. Keep choosing truth over comfort. Keep choosing alignment over acceptance. Keep choosing fire over fear. Because the moment you do, you'll stop wondering why the worst people succeed, and you'll start becoming the kind of person who doesn't ask for success, you embody it. You've felt the shift already, haven't you? That subtle, electric difference in the way you move, the way you think, the way you look at the world. It's not just awareness, it's embodiment. It's the beginning of becoming. The beginning of no longer reacting to the world like a product of it, but instead shaping it as a creator. That's what the old philosophers meant when they talked about transcendence, not floating away from life, but sinking deeper into it with eyes wide open. Because once you realize that the system isn't broken but built to keep you tame, the illusion dies. And when the illusion dies, you finally see the truth hiding in plain sight. That morality, the kind that was preached at you, was never about truth. It was about control. It was about making you question yourself before you ever had a chance to discover who you are. And what they fear most, what the world has always feared, is someone who knows who they are without asking for permission. Because that kind of person can't be manipulated. That kind of person doesn't bend under pressure. That kind of person doesn't need validation to breathe. And you're remembering how to breathe on your own. You're not interested in living someone else's idea of goodness anymore. You're interested in alignment, in truth, in inner fire. You're interested in waking up every day knowing that you are living from the center of your being, not the edge of someone else's approval. And yes, that will make you dangerous, but not in the way they told you. You won't be dangerous because you hurt people. You'll be dangerous because you can no longer be owned. You'll be dangerous because you've taken back the pen. You've become the author of your life, and that means no one gets to edit your story without your consent. You see, the worst people rise because they don't hesitate. They don't ask, is this allowed? They ask, is this aligned with my will? And that difference, just that shift in language, is everything. It's the shift from moral subservience to personal sovereignty. It's the difference between waiting to be chosen and realizing you were never meant to wait at all. And you don't need to mirror their ruthlessness. You just need to mirror their certainty. Because when certainty meets integrity, you become unstoppable. You become the rare force that the world cannot ignore. Because you're not chasing approval, you're radiating power. Quiet power. Steady power. The kind that doesn't shout but still shakes the ground. And when that power lives in you, people feel it. Some will honor it, some will fear it, some will try to fight it. Let them. Your job is not to explain your essence, your job is to embody it, fully, without dilution, without apology. You were not born to be palatable, you were born to be potent. And potency looks different on everyone. For you, it might be speaking when you used to stay silent. It might be walking away from what no longer serves you, even if it means walking alone. It might be finally owning the part of yourself that you were taught to hide, the desire, the brilliance, the fire, the depth. That part of you, the one you buried to belong, it's not gone, it's waiting. And this moment right now, this is your invitation to unearth it. To pull it up from the roots and let it breathe again, to give it your voice, your name, your devotion, not because the world will clap for you, but because your soul already is. You've been taught to measure your worth by how easy you are to love, but ease has never been the measure of truth. Some truths are jagged, some awaken, some disrupt. That doesn't make them less real, it makes them more powerful. And you are that truth now, walking, breathing, remembering. You are not the morality you were sold. You are not the softness they demanded. You are not the shell they praised while hoping you'd never crack it open. You are the force underneath, the fire behind the eyes, the breath behind the silence. And that force is not here to be controlled. It's here to create new patterns, create new standards. Create a new relationship with power that doesn't mimic the tyrant, but also doesn't martyr the self. You get to hold your strength without guilt. You get to shine without explanation. You get to lead without needing to be perfect. Because perfection was never the goal. Power is not about being flawless. It's about being real, raw, integrated, awake. Power is the decision to meet life fully, with open hands and open eyes, and say, I'm here, and I'm not hiding anymore. And the more you do that, the more you choose yourself over performance, over legacy, over obedience, the more the world begins to reflect that back to you, Not always immediately, not always gently, but undeniably, because the universe moves in response to authenticity. And you are becoming authentic in a way that can't be faked. You are no longer trying to fit in. You are allowing yourself to stand out. And in doing so, you're rewriting what power looks like. You're proving that strength and soul are not opposites, that leadership can come from depth, that success doesn't have to mean selling your spirit, that rising doesn't have to mean losing your roots. You are anchoring into something deeper now, something eternal, the part of you that isn't defined by circumstance or praise or performance, the part of you that just is. And from that place, you move differently. You speak with a gravity that makes people listen. You walk with a calm that doesn't waver in storms. You choose with a knowing that doesn't need consensus. Because now, you know the secret. You've seen why the worst people rise. And you've made the decision to rise differently. Not by abandoning your values, but by redefining them. Not by waiting to be seen, but by becoming undeniable. There is a moment after all the shedding, after the silence, after the fire has burned through every falsehood you've ever carried, when something new begins to emerge, not a better version of you, a truer one that doesn't flinch when seen, one that doesn't dim in the presence of power but meets it, mirrors it, becomes it. This is the version of you that was never truly gone, only buried beneath the weight of who the world said you had to be to survive. But survival is no longer your goal. You're not here to survive. You're here to sculpt reality with your words, your presence, your energy. And you don't need to wait for the stars to align or the timing to be perfect. The permission slip you've been waiting for has always been in your own hands. The key was never hidden. It was only forgotten. Now you remember. You remember that power isn't about rising above others, it's about rising above who you were yesterday. It's about looking your fear in the eye and saying, you may walk beside me, but you do not lead. It's about owning your darkness, not as shame but as sacred fuel. Because the truth is, your pain was never the problem, your powerlessness was, and that ends now. You don't need to be louder than the world. You just need to be louder than your doubt. You don't need to crush the noise, you only need to stop mistaking it for truth. Because the real truth isn't complicated. It's not something someone else holds over your head. It's already in your body, your breath, your bones. It's been whispering to you all along. And now, finally, you're listening. That whisper is turning into a roar. And with that roar, you'll begin to see it, the old stories falling away. The people who once held power over you beginning to look smaller, not because they changed, but because you stopped shrinking to make them feel big. You'll start walking into rooms and commanding energy without needing to say a word. Not because you're better, but because you're free. And freedom always makes noise. You'll begin to choose differently. Not from fear, not from obligation, but from vision, from clarity. You'll stop negotiating with mediocrity. You'll stop tolerating what drains you. You'll stop waiting for someone to crown you because you'll realize you were always the throne. That's the shift that changes everything. Because once you stop outsourcing your power, you stop outsourcing your peace. You stop chasing validation like oxygen. You stop mistaking belonging for love. You stop giving your time, your energy, your brilliance to people who have not earned access to your truth. And in that sacred reclaiming you rise, not in arrogance, in alignment, not above others, above your old self. You become the person who doesn't flinch when things get hard, the person who doesn't collapse under the weight of opinion, the person who doesn't confuse stillness with weakness or solitude with absence or power with performance. Because now you know who you are, and that knowing is enough. You don't need to argue anymore. You don't need to prove anything anymore. You don't need to explain why you want more, why you feel different, why you refuse to play the game. You simply choose, and that choice creates a ripple. People will feel it. Some will be inspired, some will walk away. Let them. You're not responsible for how others respond to your awakening. You're only responsible for honoring it. Because the more you honor it, the more the world reshapes around your energy. The more you let go of the idea that success belongs to the loudest or the cruelest or the most ruthless, the more you'll see that real success, lasting, soul-rooted success, belongs to those who are brave enough to meet life without a mask. And you are that brave now. Brave enough to stop hiding your power behind modesty. Brave enough to stop watering yourself down so others don't drown in their own limitations. Brave enough to carry both shadow and light, and call both sacred, because you've realized something that most never do. That the reason the worst people often succeed isn't because they are chosen or lucky or even powerful. It's because they're willing to act without shame, to own what they want, even if it offends others, to move while the rest of the world waits for a sign. But now, you don't have to watch them anymore, because you've become the one who moves, the one who doesn't wait, the one who doesn't flinch. You've become the living proof that power doesn't belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to the clearest one, and your voice, it's clear now. Your energy, it's sovereign. Your future, it's no longer in their hands, it's in yours. So go claim it, not tomorrow, now.